Isn't it so amazing that people come in such great varieties? I mean, and where their minds are, you know, you cannot tell. Just naively, we sort of think that, well, everybody thinks kind of like me. No, they don't, and you don't kind of think like them. They're just all over the place, you know, and we have that freedom here to think our thoughts, however they might be. Underneath all that, there's a sameness, and then we talk about that every morning in here when we say, help me love my brother as I love myself, or see my brother, I think, maybe, as myself, and so that we can love him. Don't see the stuff he puts out. And so when you're surrounded, like you were in Israel there, talking about the man saying that, well, we can't give this piece of land away because the Old Testament says you can't. You're coming into contact there with a person who believes in a book of rules. And those rules tell him whether to step this way or that way. And he has the right to do that, but that is totally different. Now we have a book here too, but we do not regard it as a book of rules. Rule number 1, do this. Because first place, there's no coercion to it. It gives you, the Course in Miracles makes a lot of very definite statements. It, like about the battleground. And it says stay above the battleground. It's not a rule like you're going to be punished if you don't do it. That'd be ridiculous. We're trying to get away from punishment or fighting and all that. It simply, in fact, if you say, I'm going to stay above the battleground because if I don't, I will be punished. You already believe in the battleground. You know, and your punishment is over the hill there. Coming, you know, depending on what you do, I suppose. So when it says stay above the battleground, what it's really saying is this is the way to be peaceful. This is the way to this points you towards truth. Truth does not contain violence or conflict. So if you don't have to go through violence and conflict to get to truth. That's the world teaches that a lot. That you have to use murder to save your country or your group or whatever. Anytime that someone carries a firearm, I guess I would, I don't know, for their own protection. I'm not talking about police or the army at this point, but you carry a firearm for your own protection. It's in your pocket, maybe. You have said to yourself, I'm willing to kill. Actually, what you need to say to yourself is, I am not willing to kill. Therefore, take all the bullets out of that thing and just use it as a symbol or something, but you do not want to make use of that. If only your own thoughts can hurt you, the body passing away doesn't hurt you. So why should you try to attack another to prevent that which doesn't hurt you? And the Course says, look, you do not die at the wrong time. A gun in front of your face is nothing to be feared. If it's not your time, it won't go off. Or the guy will have a stroke before he has a chance to, and fall over unconscious before he has the opportunity to make use of it. And if it is your time, well, hey,
You don't want to stay, do you?
not a problem here.
Get a new address.
Get a new address, you know.
Well,
And-
that's true.
And there's no particular reason to think anything needs to be painful. Painful, it says, is always just it's a misperception. Somewhere along the road, you have perceived something. That sounds strange to a lot of people. It doesn't mean that if your hand hurts, that for some reason or other, it doesn't mean you should start saying, well, what did I misperceive? What did I see yesterday that was different from before? You don't really have to try to run down the misperception. The misperception is in your mind that hurt is real. It can hit you as well as another. and that doesn't mean the experience of it doesn't feel real to people that are in pain. Now, it'll feel real to you too, probably. If you're in pain, you're in pain. It really gets our attention. It just means that it gives you an opportunity to ask yourself, how have I been perceiving the world in general? Okay? Have I been perceiving it as something that can harm me? Okay, that's a misperception. Open the door to pain. You've said, first of all, you think you could be harmed. See? So, my goal doesn't come from some rule from the Course of Miracles. It's just a belief and an understanding that there's something that points towards truth, and there's a whole lot of things that point in the opposite direction. And I'd rather go where the light points instead of head for a deeper piece of darkness over here. Now, the reason you would want to protect yourself is just due to fear. Again, you do not believe that only your own thoughts can hurt you. You believe the guy I'm about to shoot can hurt you. That's why I'm about to shoot him. And the Course actually says, well, if you think someone's about to shoot you, you might have put him into the category of an enemy. It says you have no enemies. You think that first. It's really helpful to be proactive. Instead of waiting for some threatening situation to arise, affirm that I'm in no danger. I'm just in no danger. The Course indicates that there's only one thing that can protect you in all circumstances, so you want you to keep yourself available for that, and that's the love of God. It says only the love of God can protect you in all circumstances. So, now, a big misperception. God doesn't love me. I mean, you may not go out voicing that, but as you walk down the sidewalk, as you go to the store, are you aware of the fact that God loves you? He loves everybody. He can't help it. If you tried to order him to stop, it wouldn't matter. Now, you can't exactly order God around anyway, in our understanding. But in my understanding, God cannot do anything that's not loving. It's not a possibility. That's his nature. And of course, he's not a he either, but that's neither here nor there. Gender is not a matter. Doesn't enter into the situation. But I'll keep calling him he because that's why I'm used to doing that. But he is the creator and source of all things. I have some people that say, well, and some in my family for that matter, that say, well, I don't exactly believe in God. I don't know about that. And my thought is, well, do you think there's some things that are sourceless? Something that doesn't have a source from which it comes? Have you ever seen anything like that? That has no source? You say, you look at the butterfly. What's its source? Well, it was a caterpillar. Okay, so it came from the caterpillar. Where did the caterpillar come from? Well, you start backing it up. And no matter what you start with, you're going to eventually find a source. Light. Where does light come from? Well, you say, well, that's it comes from, if you want to be scientific, it comes from charged particles that are moving, accelerating. But we don't want to usually be that scientific because we can't see the charged particles. Their electrons are too small to see, so that doesn't help. But that is where it comes from. So even light has a source. It doesn't, You say, well, isn't there something that just pops out of nothingness? I'm not sure I even know the answer to that question. I'll tell you this. Since my background is science, I'll give you a scientific answer, which I know you love and appreciate. Science says, yes, that happens, but it can't happen for very long. And it's got a little tiny interval of time where that could happen. And a couple of particles could just appear out of nowhere, but they immediately annihilate each other. So just for a nanosecond, or a trillionth of a nanosecond. They were there and then they're gone. So it allows that for a trillionth of a second. But if we leave a trillionth of a second behind and say anything that's there that exists for at least a second or so, does it come from nothing? I can't comprehend that. Everything, to my mind, needs to have a source. You see, so God is simply the name of the source that we give to the source from which you come. You may believe that that you come from nothingness, but the Course doesn't. Now, you could say the ego comes from nothing because it is nothing, if you wanted to do that. But it's not a real entity. It's not a being. It has no reality, see. You are real. The body may not be, but you are. And you cannot be destroyed. Another misperception. You probably think you can. There's not going to be any shortage of misperception here if we start going and looking for them. We're going to find some. And so the Course helps us to do that so we can just put them aside. Well, I don't have to think that way. As I understand it, there is the light of God is in every single person, and it simply cannot be put out. It doesn't mean you can always see it. Sometimes it's just clouded over by too much stuff of a different nature, too many blocks and barricades. But it's there. And so what happens when we come across people who have these blocks and barriers, so many that it's hard to see light coming from them? There's a big temptation, and we would say this comes from the ego, a big temptation to feel that I've got to fix that in some way. I've got to respond to that in some way. This person is muttering all these things that, in my opinion, are just have no truth in them at all. And I'm just going to sit here and let that float, or let that be. I've got to change that. I just was really thinking of you a lot about that regarding the man under the Book of Rules, and made this statement. Don't I need to change him? And the answer is no. Unless you want to be in the battleground. See, so it's not that you're going to be punished for being in the battleground. You're just going to be in the battleground. If you want battle, you're not going to have peace. If you're hitting somebody over the head with a club, you're not feeling peaceful, So staying above the battleground applies in your personal life, your political life, your religious life, well, the kind of life, your family life, any kind of life you want to think about. You do not have to see that as a battleground, and if you do, it's a misperception. It's not wrong. The Course really says you can't do anything wrong, but you can hurt yourself a whole lot. That's basically what it says, and you're hurt by your own thoughts. It's interesting how utterly inapplicable these ideas are to a political process. What if any candidate got up and said, I can only be hurt by my thoughts? You can only be hurt by your thoughts? I have no policies. Just be vigilant about what you're thinking, see, and you'll be fine. Clap, 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 clap. What if he got up and said, there is no opposite party. There is no party at all. There's just truth. Let's move towards it. And you're responsible for choosing what you regard as truth. No one else is. So, a book of rules takes away your choice of what you think is truth. It's telling you. And so, a book of rules is convenient for many people because it takes off of them the responsibility to connect with Spirit, so Spirit can tell them what is true. See, that's a difference here. Although we have a book here that is very extremely helpful, it does not answer your problems specifically like that. It doesn't tell you what you got to do on Tuesday. Every Tuesday, twirl around a few times and chant for a while. It doesn't do that. It just simply says, stay above the battleground if you want peace. If you don't want peace, hey, grab your sword. There are lots of battlegrounds. Tell that man a thing or two. It's so huge in us. When we are confronted with something that feels untruthful, it's so huge to want to say, here, this is truth. You hold up whatever you think. Hold up your book. See my book? It's bigger than your book. Or it's smaller because or whatever. It's the one that works. The Course in Miracles does not work that way. It's not competitive with other books. It basically wants you to use whatever works for you at the time, and that stuff is working for that guy at the time or he wouldn't be. If a book of rules works for you, use it. It's not wrong to do that. It's just your choice, that's all. And you have to start, and Spirit is going to start with you wherever you are. And it doesn't come, a rule applies to all, across the board. Everybody in the whole land must believe A, B, and C. You see? Well, maybe you're not ready to believe A, B, and C. You're working on X, Y, and Z. Somehow you go backwards and you're going to go the other way. Well, then you have a right to do that. Start there. And if you need a book of rules to start there, grab a book of rules. I have the view that everyone's exactly where they're supposed to be. And if they're hurting a whole lot, I would like to say, consider another way to be. Because there are other ways. Somebody was holding a hand up here, I don't know.
When you talk about the book of rules, it was on the board, it was just like, originally, the book of rules,
Yeah.
that's on the board there, originally wrote that up there referencing the Bible, I think. And then when I just looked at the book of rules, like the Course in Miracles, has a book of rules in it. So does the Tao Te Ching, so does many wisdom traditions.
I would like to make a distinction between rules and ideas that point you toward truth, but that do not carry a rule. To me, if it's a rule, it needs to have a penalty if it's disobeyed. Is anybody? It's like a law. A rule is pretty. And we all know that if you're going to be a lawmaker and you don't have a penalty, you might as well go home. I mean, once you realize there's no penalty, it took evidently it really took quite a while to in our country years ago to get people to not cross the street where not at the corner and not just in the middle wherever they wanted to, because they were used to horse and buggies and they would just go into the street from whatever position they wanted to go. But now we're putting the cars in place and they're going to get run over if they do that. So we want them to cross at the stop line or at the corner only, and people would just ignore that. You can say, well, it's against the rules. That for some reason or other, there wasn't a good penalty to come up with. You just decide, I'll put you in jail. Well, just grab everybody on the street you can get your arms around and take them to jail, because they all do it. See, well, it doesn't work. Too many people doing that. Somebody finally decided how to get people to cross only at the corners, or only when there was a stoplight that said they could. I don't know what particular the setup was. And what he did, he made up a word. And he said that if you cross at any place at the corner, except the corner, you're a jaywalker. And for some reason or other, that word, jay, carried weight with people. And they felt they didn't want to be a jaywalker. I don't know why there were, I don't know the origin of the word. But somehow you got that out to people, and suddenly they started going to the corner. I'm not going to be a jaywalker. And so the only thing about a law or rule, so there's got to be some penalty. In this case, it was just indirect, and it worked. Very few people jaywalk. Well, the Course in Miracles does not attach penalties or laws to its ideas. It doesn't ever do that. It just simply tells you what the consequences will be. So in other words, it's not a book of rules like the Ten Commandments. Thou shalt not murder. Thou shalt not lie or steal or whatever. It doesn't do, thou shalt means there is a punishment, and God, by the way, is the one who's going to do it to you. It doesn't say that at all. In fact, it says just the opposite. God never punishes anybody for anything, wow, it's up to you. A lot of people are just not ready for that. I need a book of rules. Don't give all that stuff. Don't give me the weight of all that responsibility to me. The Course in Miracles says that the reason that it doesn't give you rules is because they don't work. That what it wants to give you is guidance and miracles. That's the two things that it holds: guidance and miracles. So if you don't know which way to go, ask someone who does. That someone is within you. We say you use the term Holy Spirit for that more often than anything else. But it's the voice of God. If you're not sure about how a situation is going to work out, ask for a miracle. Yes.
Well, this says, Jay, referring to the path of a jaywalker might travel when crossing a road. Rather, it becomes the fact that Jay used to be a generic term for someone who is an idiot.
Well, now we understand why it worked. Who wants to be an idiot walker, right?
And also is dull, unsophisticated, poor, or a simpleton.
I did not know this. So he really hit on a potent word here.
Yeah.
Do you want to be simple and an idiot, etc.? Well,
Idiocracy.
most people don't. What the Course says instead is that he's going to take a rule off of you. You do the person who is spouting untruth just all over the place. You do not have to change that person. It's not your place to do that. It's not that you do wrong to do it. You just are jumping into a battlefield, and we're trying to go to peace instead of war. If you want to go to war, you're fine. Why are you here for? It's everywhere. We don't need to tell you how to do that. Just the first person you see, look mean at them or whatever.
There is something to change when you perceive somebody that way, and that's your mind about them.
Yeah.
That's right.
That's true.
Yes.
That's exactly right. And then you do that as quickly as possible. So if they look like an enemy, you've already got a misperception going. And pain comes from misperception. So you don't want that. That's not like a rule, because it's not. If it were tied more closely, the consequence that is, and the misperception, it might start to function like that. In other words, if every time you had a misperception, at that instant, your left foot started really, really hurting, or and then if you keep up both the left and the right foot, and then the two hands, if that happened within a second or two, you see, then that would turn into a rule, and you would do it. Okay, I hate you, but I'm going to pretend as best I can that I don't, because I'm going to get electrocuted, basically. If I do. That's a rule.
Somebody.
That's a rule.
Fake
And
it till you make it.
Yeah, there you go.
yeah. So the Course doesn't do that. It just gives you ideas that say, these work. They will take you towards peace. And you can follow them if you wish. And it just says, let's see, how did, this wonderful quote from the Course, it's just, and I can still remember when I first read it, I thought, my God, what's being said here? Jesus is speaking in the first person, and he says, I will teach you to be like me if you want. If you don't want, and I knew he was going to say, you're going straight to frickin' hell. That's why I expect, because that's the way the world thinks.
Right.
You run the red light and the policeman's there, you're going to get a ticket. If you refuse to pay it, you're going to go to jail. There has to be a penalty. I didn't put the word penalty up here. And it's attached right to it. It's not like I'm going to give you a ticket and 10 years from now you're going to have to pay it. That wouldn't work. Oh, you've murdered some people? Well, next century will come and do something to you. Well, in case you're still around, it's got to happen relatively one after the other, relatively quickly. So the course does not attach a penalty like that, but it does say that in general, pain is due to misperception. That is a quote from the course. All pain is due to misperception. But it doesn't mean some specific misperception that always will relate to your left foot. It doesn't get specific like that. It doesn't say. It doesn't say what kind of pain. It just says pain. And so then you say, well, what about misperceptions? Well, we're sort of talking about them now. There are a whole bunch of them. And so that is what you need to change when confronted by something that seems fearful. The Course says there's really nothing to fear. Nothing. If you're allowing fear into your mind, that's a big misperception. I guess really they're probably all the same, but perception is a misperception. But that's something that you would need to think of as your choice. You can choose to be fearful if you wish. And it's important to take responsibility for it instead of believing that it just occurs naturally like a rock falling on you, on your head, sort of. And the Course actually says fear is your choice. When you feel fear, you are choosing to feel fear. What the ego wants you to do is say, no, this is nothing you can help. It's out of your control. You say, and you can't help it. You feel fear because it's a fearful situation. The Course says, no, you're choosing to feel fear. So instead, say it that way. I'm now choosing to be fearful. I'm choosing to be really fearful right now. I'm still choosing to be fearful. After the 8th time, you might say, well, I could choose to not be fearful. I'm the boss here. I'm choosing to not be fearful, and Spirit will help you in that regard. Yes.
At that point, doesn't Jesus say, like, if you think you're fearful now, that's okay. Don't worry about it. I'll wait.
Yes, I didn't think. I appreciate that, Randy, because I got half of the quote out, and then I went on to something else. Let's finish the quote. He says, hell, I don't even know what I finished the quote.
I'll teach you to be like me.
But what it says is, I will wait. I know what the quote says. I just can't remember now whether I finished it. If you don't want to be like me, I will wait. I don't think I'd said.
Until you
You
do.
didn't say that part. Right?
Okay, thank you, Norm.
Yeah.
But that's what's
I didn't
different.
think I did, but yeah, did I or not?
Rules too don't wait. They need action now. If there's a rule, it needs action now.
That's right. Yeah.
If
Yeah, you
it's,
can't say to the policeman,
if it's guidance,
I'll check. I'll see about it later. No, you got to appear at the court next week. No, I'll check it out later. You can't say that.
Thanks.
but if it's guidance, and it needs no, it's timeless.
Yeah, and it's just not spelled out so clearly that you feel like it's a punishment for a specific rule. The Course is not saying that pain is the punishment for misperception. It doesn't think that way. It just says it's what causes it. It's not about punishment. You see, it just happens just like if you step into a hole, well, you fall. It's not punishment. It's just gravity pulls you down instead of pushing you up.
When you were asking earlier for us to think of something that was sourceless, I was like, well, time is kind of outside of source, isn't it?
I didn't pay you to ask that question.
You can, what you got?
I don't know the answer to
I
that.
thought the Son of God was the source of time.
Yeah, he is. In other words, God does not create time nor space.
We did.
We did.
Right.
But
made
probably
it up.
acting as a group, I doubt any one of us is sufficiently potent to do that.
We made it up so we could help explain our surroundings.
So what time was it?
Well,
when that first
actually,
came?
it's worse, much worse than that.
Randy.
But I don't know whether I want to go into that. The Course believes that we had an issue with God.
Yep.
And he was telling us one thing, and we were saying, "Oh, actually, I got a better idea. But I need a platform for it, so and we'll call that time and space. And I'll make up the platform and put pieces of matter here, there, and yonder in the platform. And I'm going to call that the new reality. I'm bringing it to heaven, by the way, so you need to get your stuff out of the water. said we wanted to do that. We wanted to be creators, but creators with our own content, not with the gods, but with our own content. Now you would think, and I'm sure we did think, that he's irritated about that, because if we were God, we would be irritated about it. Well, we're not God, and he's not irritated about it. He just accepts it as it is. He will wait until you change your mind. By the way, your content is no good.
So what God and Jesus
It
said
does,
was great.
no
Have a
good in the
ball.
sense it won't bring you peace, it won't bring you happiness, it does not work. You see? Yeah.
It's possible maybe there's only one rule that the Course in Miracles
Okay.
offers, that perfect love casts out all fear. And therein lies the peace of God.
That is a truth.
Right.
I can make it into a rule by saying that perfect love will cast out fear, and if you don't do perfect love, you're going to be punished. So in other words, if I put a penalty on it, then it becomes a rule, then it becomes a law, then it becomes a rule. There are many, many things like you say, and that's a wonderful one. Perfect love casts out fear. Fear is not real. But you must pay attention to your mind and not give it a resting place. That's your job, my job. That's what we have to do here. And then you can receive the perfect love if you want to think about it, and it will indeed cast out fear. If God loves you, you know the expression, if God is for you, who exactly can be against you? And we say plenty of people, because I'm a body and my body can be destroyed. No, you're not a body. And yes, it can be destroyed. And so what? So what? It's not who I am. And it can't even be destroyed at the wrong time. Death is not random. It cannot come at the wrong time. By death, I only mean leaving the body aside. The body's not dying, it's not alive. It's a vehicle. It's a vehicle that you need while you're here. But it is not alive. Your life is indestructible, and it is forever.
Thank you, God.
Let's join in a circle and have a closing thought.